Let's be honest, we can predict with a very high degree of certainty who is going to win most Arkansas elections a month from tomorrow. Whether one is ecstatic or deeply depressed by those all but certain results, one could adopt the attitude that voting is futile. The Torah emanates from an era when elections and democracy were unknown. Still, representative government is found in Moses' words when he tells the people, "Pick from each of your tribes personages who are wise, discerning, and experienced, and I will appoint them as your heads." Moses places himself in the role of a constitutional monarch or a ceremonial president who appoints prime ministers to form governments, but only in keeping with election results. Rabbi Noam Katz, writing in the Social Justice Torah commentary, points to a verse in this week's Torah portion. When the Most High gave nations their homes and set the divisions of the human race, God fixed the boundaries of the peoples in relation to Israel's numbers. Rabbi Katz goes on to argue that dividing peoples and their territory, as God does in Torah, enables people to be represented. That can only happen, though, if our leaders are fairly elected according to the will of the majority, which Rabbi Katz defines in the language of this week's Torah portion in relation to our numbers. Rabbi Katz adds an important point, particularly salient to those of us who live in Pulaski County, now perversely divided to separate black majority communities from one another into 3 separate congressional districts. He writes, partisan gerrymandering, the practice of redrawing boundaries of electoral districts to favor specific political interests and parties, often resulting in districts with convoluted, winding boundaries, is probably the most widespread tool of voter suppression in the United States. 2 specific methods of gerrymandering, called packing and cracking, are used to diminish the voting power of black people of color. In Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, for example, congressional districts pack as many black voters as possible into only 1 district in each state. Black people make up more than 1/4 of Alabama's population, but so many are packed into 1 bizarrely shaped district that they can influence the election of only 1 of Alabama's 7 members of the United States House of Representatives. White voters in Birmingham and Montgomery are represented by separate members of Congress. Black residents of those 2 cities, though, are gerrymandered into 1 and the same district. In Arkansas, the opposite method has been adopted. Black communities of Pulaski County have been cracked into 3 separate districts to assure that they cannot vote together to elect one of their own or any person who holds their largely shared priorities. Pulaski County is now the only Arkansas county not entirely within 1 congressional district, and it is no accident that we are divided into 3 of Arkansas's 4 congressional districts. That is on top of historic cracking perpetrated by the party now out of power. Before the recent redistricting, the only county neighboring Pulaski County, but not in the same congressional district, was heavily black Jefferson County. Instead, Pulaski County was, and now all 3 districts that include parts of Pulaski County are, districted with white flight suburban areas and/or rural communities. Despite these discouraging realities, we do have choices when early voting begins on October 24th and on Election Day, November 8th. Many of our Temple members live in districts of the State House of Representatives that have competitive elections this fall. Most of us live in the city of Little Rock, where the mayor's race is up for grabs. Even if the best we can do is to elect the least bad candidate, we need to do that. Judicial races, officially nonpartisan, are also important, And I would say that even if a retired former member of the Arkansas Supreme Court were not the temple president. One of the most beloved passages of Torah is Tzedek, Tzedek Tirdov, justice, justice shall you pursue. Rashi places the emphasis on the word pursue, which enjoins us to go into search after a reliable court. Justice, justice shall thou pursue, though, isn't the full verse, which continues that you may thrive and occupy the land that your God Adonai is giving you. Rashi explains, the selection of honest judges is sufficient merit to keep Israel in life and to settle them securely on the land. As it happens, Annabelle's Supreme Court successor is up for re-election. We must make the right choice in that election. We also have ballot initiatives before us. And here, as a rabbi of a religious nonprofit, I'm freed up and can tell you what I think specifically. Issue 4, the constitutional amendment to legalize medical marijuana, attracts the most press. There are strong moral arguments on both sides. Some will vote in favor of the amendment on the grounds that prohibition does not work, but needlessly contributes to mass incarceration, so harmful particularly in the black community. Others will vote against the amendment on the grounds that it places potentially dangerous drugs legally within the reach of children, and because, in the words of Governor Hutchinson, we would be waving the flag of surrender in the fight to save lives from drug abuse. Either stance could be solidly grounded in Jewish values, and each of us should vote our values. Issues 1 through 3 are arguably more troubling, each more dangerous than the one before it, in fact, and the choices are clear. The first would empower the legislature to call itself into special session without a call by the governor. We do not need our extremist legislature bent on removing rights from Arkansans to be in session more than absolutely necessary. The second would limit democracy and offer a special privilege to the General Assembly. A constitutional amendment initiated by our legislature could be adopted by a simple majority, while another, initiated by the laborious petition process, would require a 60% supermajority. Issue 3 should trouble us the most, as it proposes to amend the state constitution to provide that government shall not burden a person's freedom of religion, even if the burden results from a rule of general applicability. Make no mistake, this initiative is intended to empower Arkansans and Arkansas businesses to discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity using religious conviction as an excuse. Yes, I can tell you tonight, and you can tell me, who will almost certainly be our next governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general, and who will be reelected to Congress. Still, I hope that, like me, you will go to vote as early as October 24th, making your voice heard with the overwhelming majority or in loyal opposition to it. And should you imagine that voting in these races does not matter, voting for mayor, in judicial races, and for ballot initiatives certainly does. Judaism's highest calling is l'taken et ha'olam, to repair the world. We may not have the option of repairing the world with our votes in Arkansas this fall. We can, however, vote to prevent people from facing discrimination and worse. Sometimes standing in the way of harm is the greatest repair that we can accomplish. May that be God's will, and may it be our will. And let us say,